I'm Chris. I help run this thing along with Cam and that guy who was talking about Patrick. This is our November meetup. 1 year and 1 month we've been going now. Our birthday was last month, so we made it past the year. But in startup terms, does that mean that we're viable now, or is it 2 years?
We're viable.
We haven't raised any funding yet, so we're still working on that part.
I think we became a lifestyle business after we lasted a year, right?
Do what?
Yeah, we're not a startup anymore.
Oh, okay. Are we? Okay.
You're good.
Graduated.
Oh, can you hear me?
I heard you, and I can see you. You're recording right now. You're doing it on YouTube.
All right. YouTube star in the making. Here we go. So,
Your best Tom Sawyer impression.
do what?
Do your best Tom Sawyer impression.
My best time. I guess I'm doing it. I'm pretty much doing it right now. I don't have the horn rim glasses, but otherwise, I'm pretty much doing it. And the chain. I'm missing the chain. So thanks to our awesome sponsors who do awesome things for us. Big Nerd Ranch, who gives us beer, food, and roof over our heads. So they basically provide all the essentials of life for us. Thanks, Big Nerd. Simple Photo, who Cam works for, covers our meetup dues. So that's cool. And then I work for Pardot, Salesforce company, and they do other things that involve money and other events. So they helped cover the stickers. They helped cover the cake last month. So they do good stuff too. We are always looking for presenters. Always looking for presenters. Usually our presenters show up in the last 48 hours before the meetup. So that's perfectly fine. We're perfectly okay with that. But if you want to talk about something, we're open to you talking about it. We don't care if you use Ember or not. Just talk about stuff. We're good with it. So we have a website, atlantaember.io. That website has been around since middle of April, around the time of the fireside chat, and for that entire time it's been a gigantic picture of Tom Dale and Yehuda Cats and saying, we have a fireside chat that was 6 months ago. So we should probably do something else with that, and Patrick had a thing this past weekend to help start that process. It's up on GitHub. It has Ember client and a Rails API, so if you know either of those technologies or if you want to learn either of those technologies, you can dive in. I think we're going to try and get some more formal time together on a different day of the month to actually work on this thing. So stay tuned for Patrick to get that organized. A lot of pressure, Patrick.
It's organized. 2 weeks from today.
2 weeks from today.
Probably.
Probably.
The day before Thanksgiving.
That might cause a problem.
Probably not.
All right. Stay tuned once we get organized. What else do we have going on here? Does anybody have any announcements? Was anybody doing any hiring? Daniel?
Yeah, actually, I've been looking for a job. Just recently found a new one. Prime Revenue, we're in Midtown. Looking for a senior Ruby guy. Do Ember stuff as well. It's old, so it's not quite as much fun as the latest and greatest, but I'm still working on transitioning over and that so yeah, senior Ruby dev. We're looking for, I think, one now. So.
Cool.
Awesome.
Will?
Yeah, I work at a company called Online Banking Solutions. We do banking software.
Are you solving problems?
We are making solutions. We're disrupting the banking industry, and we use Ember. And we are doing a lot of Ember work, and we could use more Ember devs. So if anyone is looking, come talk to me.
You've arrived at your destination. Anybody else with any announcements? Anybody? Is anybody looking to be hired? I know Daniel just got his situation resolved. That's awesome. Anybody else?
Kind of, sort of.
We got, what's your name? You're new. What's your name?
Sandy?
Sandy?
Yeah.
Cool.
I just got here a few days ago.
Awesome.
Back to Atlanta. Graduated from tech. I worked in a bunch of startups for about 6 years.
Cool. Welcome. Thanks for coming. Mark?
Yep, kind of, but not straight Ember dev, higher level.
Okay.
I'm senior.
All right. So Mark or Sandy are both interested. So if anybody has openings, y'all can intermingle and see if there's anything going on. Anybody just excited? I'll tell you one thing. I am freaking excited that there was sunshine today.
Yes.
Like there was sunshine today, and I don't think it's a coincidence at all that it happened on the day of our meetup. I think that was like saying we're gonna have sunshine today. So I'm very excited about that because the past 2 weeks have sucked. Anybody else non-sunshine related or sun?
I'm excited about anything this month?
I'm really excited about pretty much everything. I know you said one thing, and right now I would jump up and throw me a cash box. Yeah.
Crawl me to
So I'm totally stoked about the website that we've been building. Greg and I met and we just pounded out some great things, and I'm going to talk about this more again at some point. But like, that's what I'm excited about because we're integrating with Meetup.com, we're integrating with YouTube.com. If we have any kind of other integrations, we can probably throw them in there. So we're building a big old API that we can like start to pull from and like integrate with. So, and I basically want to make cool things, and I want to facilitate us all making cool things. So, let's enthusiasm and whatnot. Cool.
All right. And then, did anybody attend Connect.js a couple of weeks ago? A few weeks ago? Mark, I know you were there. I was there. Reese, you were there. So it's a local Atlanta JavaScript conference, or not even JavaScript, web conference, I guess. The guys who organized that are doing a kind of Christmas party, I guess, towards the middle of December. They asked us to pass the word along if anybody was interested in attending. It's at Fido and Buckhead. It's December 16th, and $10 gets you 2 drinks and snacks. I'm going to send out a bigger announcement with links and whatnot to the entirety of the meetup, but I figured I'd announce it here as well just to shove it along. They seem like nice guys. The conference was pretty cool, so it'd be cool to go and intermingle if you want to go intermingle with other meetups. I think HTML5, Java, Angular, and mobile dev are the current involved meetups. I don't know if we're going to get added to that list or not, beyond just saying, hey, we're advertising it to people. So if you are interested, I will send out something probably tomorrow about it. And then that is it for the intro portion. We've got 3 talks tonight. Who wants to go first?
What are the talks?
So we've got Will is doing some stuff on form wizards using computed macros. And we've got Jeremy doing some stuff on broccoli. And then we've got... Crap, I forgot the other one. I'm terrible. Yes, John is doing authentication. So who wants to go first, or is there anybody that says, I want to hear about this first?
You can go first.
All right, Jeremy, you're up. You need a laptop, or are you just going to wing it?
This is spur of the moment, so
Awesome.
I'm
All right.
doing this basically as temporary.
Okay, cool. Oh, you'll be fine.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jeremy. I think I have about 1 week of Ember experience. So, but during that week, I got sidetracked for an afternoon poking at broccoli because I was like, why are we hard coding all of these paths? There must be a better way. Because when you use Bower, it's going to pull down and stuff a bunch of files, and you're going to probably want to pull a bunch of those files into your project. So the answer to that turned out to be to pull in broccoli funnel. The idea of broccoli funnel is to let you kind of, well, like a funnel, you can point at a whole directory tree and be like, and throw these out and just filter these in. So the idea is you feed a whole bunch in, you get a little bit out. But it actually just works fine even if you just want to just slurp the entire thing in. But because it works in terms of this tree context, you don't have to actually go through and list out all the different CSS or JS files you want to pull in. You just point at that and say, here, give me back the tree that represents all the things in this space, and don't throw anything out. And the actual output at the end of your Ember CLI build file is a tree that you spit back. So you can actually merge this tree in along, like one of the last arguments when you're asking it to say, hey, the Ember app, give me a tree. You can actually pass in additional trees to have fed in there. So you can basically just get your, figure out, your Bower directory, grab the top level directory of the component you pulled in and say, okay, slip this all in there. And just merge that tree right in there. And now you no longer have to go through and hard code all of your paths or worry about what subdirectories are in there. Did the subdirectories change when I updated the version? You don't have to worry about that anymore. So that makes it a little bit easier. One thing that I'm not sure is an actual concern is I see a lot of use of hard coding forward slashes as path separators. And I'm not sure that actually will work if you happen to try and pull your app down and run it on Windows. I'm not sure how much of a concern that is for people. But if it is a problem, I do notice that a lot of the Ember tooling does carefully both have a build passing on Travis, and also they use, I think, app CI in order to say that it's also working under Windows. Because there are people who use Windows as their main development machine. I think the hack for that is just do os.path.join and just pass all the components in there. Or if you wanted to get clever, you could pass it in there and then split, write it out with the slashes and then split on the slash. But in the event you have a component with an embedded forward slash, things could get messy. So that was the problem and solution. The bigger question is, what the heck is Broccoli, and why is Ember CLI giving it to me and using it? And
Sorry.
welcome. And there's you might know that there are quite a few different similar things to Broccoli. We've got Grunt, we've got Bower that we're actually using alongside of Broccoli. We've got Broccoli, there's Gulp, I think there's probably about 10 others because JavaScript. So what does Broccoli do that's different? And fortunately, the creator of Broccoli wrote up a nice, basically, position paper that says, here's what Broccoli is, here's what it does, and here's why you should care. And what's interesting about Broccoli kind of relative to other ones is, so let's start with Bower. Why do we use Bower? It's basically just an easy way to just slurp down files from GitHub or wherever else. So you point it at stuff, you tell it, I want this version, you give it some info, and it just slurps the files down. That's all it's smart about, is just downloading. It doesn't do much after that. And once it's local, it's all your responsibility. So it does one part of the chain. But now we have all these files that we need to do something with. I hope you need something with them. Otherwise, you can probably get rid of that dependency. But now we have them. How do we actually compile them and merge them all together into assets that we can deploy with our application? And that's what Broccoli is doing for us. And Broccoli works on the notion of a tree. So rather than thinking about just individual files or working with streams as Gulp does, it has this notion of, okay, give me a bunch of trees, or maybe a forest, a list of trees, and feed it through one thing that spits out trees, and feed it through the next thing that spits out trees. And what's turned out to be nice about this tree concept is that it nicely handles compilers like Sass that don't just take one file and spit out one output, because you have an include path. You have other files it needs to pull in. So this tree thing kind of papers over that. It takes in a tree that represents all the files it cares about, and then it gives you back a tree which might just be the one compiled output file. And if you, in the event you have something like CoffeeScript, where it's just give me a CoffeeScript file, spit out a JSON file, spit out a JavaScript file, that's just a simple case where the input tree has just one thing and spits out one thing. So that becomes a simple case rather than being something complicated where you have to go outside the paradigm, which is kind of a problem that we run into with Gulp, because it has this notion of streaming everything. And in the event you either need to seek and you need to back up in your stream, and all of a sudden you've broken your whole notion of working in terms of streams, you need files again. And streams don't really have last modified dates or anything. So again, we start kind of importing more and more of this file stuff. So it's like, let's just forget streams, go to the file system. So that's what Broccoli does. It also has some other interesting approaches in terms of preferring not to try to parallelize builds, just because that often introduces strange race conditions that, for the sake of what's likely not a huge performance gain, especially not in the incremental compilation stage, which is what we're kind of optimizing for, is that not the initial build everything like you can go get a coffee, but as you're sitting there hacking, you don't want to have to wait 5 seconds to see what you just changed reload onto your screen. So that's really the core experience it's trying to optimize for, is make changes I make to my files show up as fast as possible in my browser. And its approach to that, rather than trying to be clever about having you manually specify dependencies, which is what you end up doing if you try to use Grunt, which is basically just a task runner, to do that yourself, or similar to what Make does, where it's, these things, this output depends on these inputs, and I'm going to tell you what they all are, and I have to worry about all that. Instead, it just has you basically you just build it all, and the individual transforms worry about, instead of trying to be clever about when to rebuild something, they rely heavily on caching. So the idea is that instead of trying to be careful and make sure that we properly know what to invalidate when one file changes downstream, instead of tracking that whole dependency tree, we can just rerun the entire thing and just be very good about going, oh, nothing, this didn't change, that didn't change, that didn't change, that didn't change. And avoid work that way and reuse work that we've done before by holding onto those files. So we basically end up trading disk for speed, but also for simplicity. So that's Broccoli.
Sounds very Glimmer-esque. Like,
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison. That didn't occur to me, but yeah, and I think similarly it makes it simpler to work with because you don't have to worry about figuring out what to invalidate.
So he said Glimmer-esque, right?
Yes,
Say it for me.
sounds very Glimmer-esque. Good point. Yes, you're right.
That's sort of
Yes, the catchbox.
that's
Yes.
right.
That's a good point.
Everybody needs their own case box.
We'll just mic the entire audience. Nobody cough. All right. So, any other questions?
I have a question.
Did we have a catchbox?
All right. I am.
You know, what we can do is we can just. Okay, there we go. There you go.
Yeah, just with the idea of the tree thing, that comparison, is there other, I guess, libraries that like require that use the same type of concept? Because someone else, just kind of rings a bell with me. Someone else was explaining it about not having to load in all the files, but it'll just, using that tree idea, get exactly what you need? Or is that like a unique thing to Broccoli?
So, I don't know.
Okay.
Relative to the other build tools I looked at, it looked like making the tree the center of the entire build world was a unique feature of Broccoli, versus streams or just making that your problem entirely, and it's not. It's outside of what the responsibility of the tool is. Other than that, I mean, trees are a basic computer data type, so they're going to show up everywhere. Your whole directory structure is basically a tree. I think I saw another hand.
Yeah.
I think
Pat.
it's the word.
Oh, catchbox? Yes.
Yes, I was actually just going to make a comment. I've been working heavily in Broccoli for the past week or so. And one of the nice things about it you can do is you can import Node just like regular Node modules. And so if you need to do something extra that maybe a Broccoli filter doesn't give you or plugin doesn't give you, you can import Node and just work stuff like you normally do in Node too. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and it looked like for the really simple case of when you said filter, that's that kind of one-to-one transformer idea that we have. It's pretty straightforward to, like, it has really good tooling, so you can basically write your own filter step and just lean on it for all the caching and other work you need to worry about. So a lot of the common work is done so that you could easily slip something new into the pipeline yourself as well. Cool. Who's next?
That was very cool. I want to give you a spot.
Well, John, you want to battle for it?
I know.
Yeah, go for it.
Hell of a battle.
Yeah. I feel like there was some.
Using the cord to get up there? Ooh, I get you. So while I'm getting set up here, my name's John, by the way. I'm actually interning here at Big Nerd Ranch for probably about a month and a half longer, but I've probably been using Ember since July, so I probably have less experience with Ember here than anybody else. But this is going to be just a real quick presentation on Ember Simple Auth. Really reason I wanted to kind of just talk about it is just because, as you can see here, the latest release is the 1.0 stable release was pretty recent. And up until now, if you wanted to use Simple Auth, which as far as I know is the only authentication library really used for Ember, I don't know if there's probably a few other ones out there, but I mean, who here has used SimpleAuth before? Probably just about everybody. If you wanted to use it with Ember 2.0, you had to use this J.J. Abrams branch, which was basically, it was their working 1.0. They just didn't have the docs up and ready for it yet, so they didn't merge it into master up until about, I guess, a month ago. So currently they're on 1.01. And then basically it's a really simple to use library, hence the word SimpleAuth for just basically, this is what it does here. Client-side authentication, it'll maintain that session basically across all your Windows tabs and whatnot. Pretty much, in case you want to open tabs, close them, it'll keep that session authenticated or not authenticated. Other kind of cool thing is you can actually authenticate against like your own authentication server. You can authenticate with OAuth 2 against Facebook, Google, GitHub, whatever OAuth workflow you're using. There is an add-on library called Tori, which is kind of neat. You can actually use that to manage pop-ups for if you wanted to use like Google or Facebook or any of those. It'll actually manage the little pop-up modals and kind of get your authentication working that way too. Obviously, another big part authorizes request to backend servers, so it'll actually tack on your tokens, any kind of headers you want. The last part, it's pretty customizable, so you don't have to use the built-in authenticators, authorizers that they give you. You can create your own. Other nice thing about the 1.0 is they have a dummy app, so if anyone wants to just open up SimpleAuth and fiddle around with it, it comes with a dummy app. You can clone it off their GitHub page. I was going to kind of run through like a real quick 2 or 3 minute demo with it after I'm done with the slides here, which I've only got about 5 or 6 more. And basically in the dummy app, they actually have like an auth set up with their own server. They have I think they're using Tori if you want to test out how it works with the external OAuth 2 provider. And I haven't really dove too much into this, but I guess they integrate it as well with Ember data, which is one of the things that 1.0 is kind of trying to bring it up to speed on. And the other stuff I really wanted to go over is just what's new in 1.0, like why is it actually worth talking about that they're on 1.0 of Ember SimpleAuth and whatever everyone was using back in the day. The big kind of difference that most people would notice is that they're using sessions now. Used to be on SimpleAuth, and any kind of template or controller component is pretty much like a globally available object. It was injected in any. You could basically refer to the session, but now you just actually have to explicitly inject it into whatever controller or whatever. I guess it used to actually go into every route controller component. So just make sure if you're using it now, if you don't know about it, if you forget to inject this session into that module, you can't use any of the methods on the session property. That's the big change. I'm not too familiar with dependency injection. I'm sure everyone here probably is, but it seems like an optimization. That's a good thing, I'm guessing.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, all right.
It didn't do that automatically for all. You have to do that manually in the other versions.
Okay. Other new stuff is compatible with 2.0. That was one of the things. If you wanted to use Ember 2.0 with SimpleAuth, you had to use that J.J. Abrams branch. You can only do it as Ember CLI add-on. That makes it easy. You don't have to fool around with Bower or whatnot. Just do the Ember install. The other thing is they changed. Whoop, there goes my slides. Questions? Not yet. They changed the config file. You used to be able to set like a cross-origin whitelist. You could set the store in your environment config. They got rid of that now. There's only 4 properties. The authentication route, base URL, route after authentication, and the route if already authenticated. The other stuff you just actually have to set inside of their own modules, I believe. The default store is local storage, but you can set it to use session storage or cookies if you want. You used to be able to do that in the config. You can't anymore. They don't do auto authorization of AJAX requests. You actually have to explicitly tell each request to do that. They also added in a new data adapter mix-in, which is pretty neat. I haven't tried it, but you can actually extend your application adapter off of the data adapter mix-in, and supposedly that will add those headers automatically in your Ember data requests. Last part, just kind of in case anyone hasn't used it yet, the namespacing's changed on all the imports. So it used to be SimpleAuth, now it's Ember SimpleAuth. So yeah, and I've looked on, there's a lot of old tutorials out there, and half of them say SimpleAuth, half of them say Ember SimpleAuth, and if you're not paying attention, just something to save you some time. This is pretty much the most common thing is used in it. Everyone here has probably seen them, but you got your application route mix-in. Usually you put that on your application route. That'll pretty much let you use some of the session methods like authentication succeeded or invalidation succeeded. The other big 2 ones are the authenticated route mix-in. Basically you want to set that on a route if you want it to be accessible only if you're authenticated, and then you have the unauthenticated route mix-in, which is basically for a route that you should only be on if you're not authenticated, and it's generally your login route or your sign-in route, whatever you want to call it. Last, I'll just go over some of the config properties real quick, and then I'm going to spin up that dummy app just to go through our quick run-through. Obviously, if you want to set any of those, you go in your config/environment.js, just set them right there as an environment variable. The big ones are used, they kind of go hand in hand with these classes from the API I was showing earlier. But your authentication route, that's basically what route to go to if you try to log into the app, or I guess not log into it, but if you go to the app and you're not authenticated, you try to go to like a protected route, it'll actually reroute you to usually your login route or whatever you want to define it as. I think the default is login. Route after authentication, that's the route you want to transition to after you've logged in. I believe the default for that is index, but after you've logged in, it'll transition you to that. And then the last one is a route if already authenticated, and that's basically if, say you've already logged in, but then you try to go to the login route, it knows you're already authenticated, so it just skips that, and it'll transition you to, you can pretty much define what route you want that to be. A couple helpful links. I'll put this up on the Meetup, I guess. There's some really good videos on the new stuff in Simple Auth out there also. There's like a 45-minute one from the main developer. It's kind of long, but he pretty much talks through a lot of the new upgrades. There's a real short one. It's like 8 minutes long. It's actually on their page, and they have a blog post on, if you want to upgrade to it. The other thing I'd recommend, like if anyone really wants to dive into OAuth, I just kind of found this from personal experience over the last month on a little internal project we had, is it really helps to actually read the official spec on OAuth 2. I didn't think so, but if I had done this first, I would have saved myself probably a week or two. And it's not a bad spec to read through also. I mean, it's one of those old school ASCII texts. They use like little diagrams, but it's actually readable. And just to figure out what kind of OAuth, I guess, workflow you're using, just recommend that to anybody who is wanting to dive into authentication, authorization, because it's not a bad read. So that's the slides. Real quick, I'll spin up that dummy app just so anyone can see it.
Did they fix all their deprecations?
On the dummy app, there shouldn't be any right now because I just installed this yesterday and I don't think I have any. So, yeah.
If you go to the Ember panel, it actually has a deprecation section.
Yeah, I think I just checked it. It's got a 0, so. Yeah, because I think up until now, they had quite a few of them on there. So that's kind of one of the nice things about 1.0 is that supposedly it's up to speed with Ember 2.0. Up until now, if you wanted to use Ember 2.0, and unless you wanted to use that J.J. Abrams branch, it seems kind of weird to try to use a library and have to use a funny sounding branch. I guess that's something. It's like a.
That's been an Ember thing.
Yeah, the Ember resolver and whatever. Yeah, that's so anyway. But we'll just go through this real quick. As you can see, it actually put me on here. Let's check what route we're on here. Current route only. It brought me directly to the index route. That's because I was already logged in because I was messing around with it earlier. So that was that. I think it's called route if already authenticated. It'll just bring you directly to the index route. But say I log out. We'll check what route we're on. Still on the index route supposedly. That doesn't make sense. Let's reload it here real quick. All right.
The index is unauthenticated.
You're right. You're right.
You can view the magical protected page.
Yeah, so that's basically just the two routes they got. The protected one, which is I think an authenticated route, and then they have an auth error page if you want to experiment with like getting error messages from the server.
See it.
But I think either one of these right now will bring you to the login route because you're not logged in.
Yeah.
I think it's let me and in.
Yeah.
You can also use Facebook. I'm not going to type my Facebook password out there, but that'll log me in. So I don't know if it worked. Did I type it in right? Let's try it again. All right, yeah, so now I am authenticated, the logout switch is there, and you can go to this protected page as well.
Wow.
Yeah, I've got a couple blog posts on there. That's pretty much it, though.
So I'm actually, yeah, I agree with the auth error page.
Yeah, you want to check it out? Bing. And yeah, since it has an error, you can set it up to immediately invalidate the session, which that's nothing new, but pretty cool. You can actually, I think it's one of their methods.
So is that when I have my key and passing it back in the headers to like for any request I might make?
I believe so. I was looking at the
And
API here.
So if that if for some reason that key doesn't match appropriately, it's gonna automatically log me out.
I think so. I know you can set it up with like invalidation succeeded or something like that, but it should be. This is the API, by the way, and they've actually. The nice thing about it is all the docs are on there. It's pretty nice, but yeah, that's what that
That's what
error route was for. Yeah, I think it's
Like
based
that.
on the
If I
actual.
send back the appropriate error
Yeah.
that says you were not authenticated.
Yeah, I'll check it out real quick just here in Adam if I can. I think they actually have it set up as a route. Protected route. It's probably the actual template for it, for the component. I don't know. Might be in the controller.
Yeah. It's probably all buried, actually. I don't know.
Yeah. But that's what that one's doing. I think
That's
it's.
pretty cool.
But yeah, that's the last thing I was going to mention. Like the API, if you want to dig in on it, they do have it updated too. It's at 1.01 now, and that's why they delayed on merging that J.J. Abrams into the actual master. They wanted to get the docs up and ready because they didn't want to kind of follow the lead of how Ember themselves have done it, like with the whole 1.13 and 2.0 coming out before the docs are ready. So they're actually pretty up to date and pretty concise. You know, very good explanations of like what the different classes are, the different properties and methods you can use.
Yeah, it's even improved from what it used to be. They were always pretty good, but that's even better
Yeah.
than what it was.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it. Does anybody have any questions that I or any other people here can answer on authentication? Because I'm sure I'm not super up to speed, but go ahead, Will.
Yeah, could you go back and show the page where we were setting the environment configuration?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Pretty much that's just going to be your environment config. So this one right here. This is it in the dummy app, but it's in the config directory environment.js. I think it's actually nested here on the same level as the app. So yeah, it's usually the only one in there. But with this dummy app, they're not even setting any of them. I think they're just using the defaults like that route after authenticated.
So I guess that's what my question is. If you're writing an add-on, do you just define things in the add-ons environment config? Because the add-ons environment config looks like a require type syntax. It doesn't look like, or maybe this requires syntax like this. So if I define an env inside of my add-on, will that be directly available to be overridden in the app that it's merged into? Because I couldn't find, when I wrote an add-on, I couldn't find any clear way in which you were supposed to do configuration. This is the first time I've seen someone do this. Does anyone know?
Yeah, in this case, this dummy app is actually nested inside of the add-on, so this may not be the actual environment.js that Ember is
I
simple
believe
off.
it's just.
Yeah, they've got it nested inside of like.
merged in.
So when you generate an add-on, does it have that config file?
It does, yes. It's just, it's
Is it,
empty.
so, but it's not inside of the test directory or whatever it's called.
Yeah, that's how this one is. It's inside that test directory, and
Yeah, there's like some hack to do that. I know what you're saying, right? Like to get that config available inside of the add-ons code. Is that what you're asking?
The add-ons config inside of the parent's code.
Yeah, so how are they exposing it in such a way that I can access and know what their env variable is that I override in my own env?
I don't
Like
know.
he did here. That's the slide looked like you were overriding the simple auth env. Can you show the slide?
yeah.
I'll see if I can find it. They were talking about it in the
Like right here?
Slack the other day.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, this would just be like on an app, but that's how they've always done it. Is they've
But it's like they have their own set of defaults that you're overriding. So that seems like their add-on merges that into your own env such that you have that variable.
My guess is that rather than overriding, it's doing an, okay, let me look up ember simple auth dot authentication route, and if it's empty, let me use this default. So you're passing info to the plugin, but it's just reading it out. It's not actually pushing anything up and touching your end. I think it's only reading it from the end, not touching it.
So it's like extending their own env with mine?
No, your entire application has a single environment, and it's running as part of your application. So when it goes, let me see what the authentication route is, it goes and looks it up under this, you're basically handshaking, like, it goes and checks, it basically creates its own little namespace as an object under Ember simple auth in the overall end. And that's for you as the application author to give it information. So,
If you don't define it there, then
if you don't
it's
define
used
it, it will
to-
use the default, it has hard-coded on it.
Okay, so you would just, so when you're writing the add-on,
You would
you would let someone know what you're exposing as.
Yes.
Because when I did this myself and I had no like guide, I wrote my own file that you would use dependency injection to override the dependency in the file that you have. So the add-on has its own, and then you could override the name of the module. So if it was like config : your add-on name, if you injected your own, it would override that. But this seems more the Ember way to do that. So I guess.
It doesn't sound like what you're, doesn't sound like the implementation then is to actually just write an env file, right? I mean, so it's like, you might have to like write something more sophisticated in your.
So, but the difference between this and what you're describing is basically that you now have a file that they can easily look at to see what the defaults are. But that's basically, you're basically reading that and using that as your own default. So you could think
No, I
of
did.
it.
I imported that and extended it when I injected it, so I would only override the ones I want to.
Yeah, so
This is my own made-up
Yeah.
workflow, so it's
yeah,
not like.
it comes out to the same
Pull up the
thing.
source code.
For
The
simple
The
auth?
difference is that instead of
This is it right here.
writing it in the overall, and
They're just gonna check to see if
So
that's
they have their own-
If it's not gonna use your own.
yeah, if it's undefined, it'll make.
Oh, I got something else. You want to check
So
this one
that's
out?
something that should be clear to all, and they should have some sort of.
Browser file.
Yeah, there's probably documentation or maybe.
Oh, in the add-on inside
It
there?
wasn't when I looked a few months
Yeah,
ago.
here
Oh,
it
you're
is.
talking about Ember, should make it clear for the Ember.
Yeah, so that
Yeah.
all. add-ons
Configuration?
have-
I don't know if that's-
And they specify.
That's like the file that they are doing that with. Oh, that's got their defaults in it.
You have a config file.
Yeah, there
I
it is.
think you just are able to, like, I think Ember CLI just says, oh, look, I have this add-on, it's got this configuration.js, I'm just gonna import all this crap and make it available in my EV file.
I don't know.
This is the code. This is the code.
Constant
Yeah, this is how
defaults.
they're doing it. It's on that
So they
add-on.
have defaults, and then if we scroll down, and it's documented on how to pass it info.
I would assume the add-on name.
And if we see it, look up its authentication route, export default.
Oh.
Interesting.
So where's it in,
Yeah, I don't know.
initializing this?
I think Ember CLI is just doing it for you.
It's one of those Ember magic.
Yeah.
Well, so does that
So
mean?
is add-on configuration JS?
Oh wait, what's that
Yeah.
default
The
stuff?
configuration.
Down a little bit. I saw a default authentication route.
Down in here. Oh, here it
Yeah,
is.
It is starting with that as info. So how do we end up read-only static default login?
So the env will just, the in configuration will just override the property here. This is just the property.
Yeah, what's the thing that uses that? Can you run a search for authentication route?
In this file?
No, just in the repository.
Yeah.
So the top, the very top is a search
Yeah,
for
the
the entire
top
repository.
search bar.
Right here.
Authentication route. Let's see where it's actually used. Oh, as one.
One string, yeah. It's not case sensitive, is it?
So that's how it's
Testing.
creation. Add-on mixins. There's the authentication route, and here's where it's pulling that. So let's look at that add-ons mixin right there. Yeah.
That's the actual
Go down to
mix in.
authentication route.
Oh, where it pulls it in
Oh
from?
wow, that markup is fun.
What is the story with that?
I think we're still in a comment here. I think. Yeah, that's all comment. Okay, before model.
Yeah, there was some
Transition.
document at the bottom.
This is one of those where the raw view might make more sense, but
Is it
if
before-
not this, that is indicated transition data board configuration data. So it is reading out of the whatever the configuration object is.
Yeah.
That might be what we were looking at.
Yeah, there must be some step where it overrides the configuration object.
Yeah.
Maybe that authentication.
Yeah, so it has a configuration object that's different than the EN.
So that's exactly
I
what
think that's what this is. Yeah, their authenticated route, yeah.
Initializers instead of,
Yeah.
which I think it makes more sense to do.
Yeah, and you have to bounce around some more to
Is
see
there,
how all of
is
this.
so that in the add-on you have to build a way to override the configuration file that you built with the ENV
Yeah,
file?
so there's
You
an
have to build
Ember
that.
add-on key. Okay. I'm looking at the docs now, so
Yes,
package.json, there's an Ember add-on key, it gives you a config path, and you tell it, this is my config path.
Okay.
So you point it to your config in the add-on, and then it just merges.
Ah.
Okay, so they did formalize that.
So that's how it gets to that configuration.js and
Where are you
add-on.
looking? You're looking at the Ember add-on?
Yeah, ember.cli.com, and then you click on extending and go down to developing
Okay.
add-ons and
Yeah,
blueprints.
that wasn't there like 2 months ago, so that's nice.
It's a new thing.
They figured it out.
Good job, Ember.
It sounds like Ember CLI is under active development at this point. So.
Yes.
Kind of constant.
It's just the
Yeah.
same as Ember.
Yeah.
We were supposed to have 2.0 this week under CLI.
I was gonna say, we've had a marked period of
Not yet.
stability in the Ember CLI world.
Well, when you make the big jump from what 0.2.7 to 1.13.
That was a cool exploration.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions? Anybody else? Till
Yeah, go ahead.
someone.
Yeah, boss.
Anybody?
Oh, I have
Crickets.
kind of a general, thank you. A general question for the group. I'm curious, for most folks that have used Simple Auth, by maybe show of hands, who has rolled their own internal server to do authentication? And then was it all header tokens that you were passing back and forth? Is that like the best practice?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, every time in header
That's the pair authentication stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Always over HTTP though, S.
Yes. Should get that last letter there, right? All right.
So if anybody's not familiar with it, the Ember Global Meetup, it's a thing that Ember showed how to he runs it. That's not the first time, and it will be the last. He runs this thing, Ember Global Meetup. If you Google it, you'll find it. They do things every Saturday morning, and they did a whole session this past weekend on authentication, and Marco did
Okay.
a pretty long thing on Ember Simple Auth and
Cool.
getting to 1.0 and how it's all working.
It might have been that long video. He did one like just recently. Is
Yeah,
it on YouTube?
That one was a few months ago.
Okay.
This one was just this past Saturday.
Sweet.
So it's probably worth a look if you're interested. There's other good stuff that comes out of that too. Besides that.
Actually, another question. So, when it's using local storage by default to store your token, I'm assuming.
All your
it's
authentication
your
session stuff, yeah.
Using those.
It says default to cookie now. I thought it said something like
I think it's default local storage, but you can set it to cookie or session.
that. Okay.
So if it's using local storage and you shut the browser, when you log back in, that cookie will still be there, right? Is there a way
I
to,
think you can drop an expiration on it.
so let's say the expiration hasn't timed out. Is there a way in local storage to just blow away that cookie, or does it, when you get back in, you try to hit an authenticated URL, it realizes it gets back a 400 error 403 from the server because you don't have a valid cookie and from the server, and then it logs you out, takes you to the auth route, or is there a way to like hook in and get rid of that on browser shut?
You can set in that session dot invalidate method, I believe it's called.
So potentially that's what when the error route that happens,
Yeah.
like hopefully it will remove the data from local storage.
Well,
We didn't look
you
at
probably
it.
want to use session storage instead of local storage.
If you use session
Session
storage,
storage
then-
throws it away.
But you can't share it between tabs, is what I ran into when I used session storage. So I had to use local storage. I rolled my own, and that's just a problem. I don't know if anyone knows how to solve that, but I didn't.
I mean, hopefully that's solved. I would imagine if I were designing it, I would design it such that it would while it sends you back to the not logged in route, it would also remove whatever looks.
Right, but what I'm saying is there a way to avoid the step where you talk to the server and it says, okay, well, you just sent me this invalid? Because you can't inspect your own cookie, like that you're passing back and forth, like your server cookie. You know, if you're talking to like Tomcat, you've got a Tomcat cookie you're passing back and forth. You can't look to see if you have one of those. That's not secure. So if you shut the browser and the expiration time hasn't stopped, like local storage is by definition it's going to stay in between when you shut the browser.
Aren't there hooks that
Yeah.
aren't there hooks that you can like latch onto? So if maybe within your local storage you had an expiration date, and I know there's at least hooks on whether you should authorize a route, and then there's also hooks on whether you should send in like your put your token on when you make a server request. I would think that with one of these hooks, you could inspect any expiration date that you assigned in local storage. And if it was past the expiration date, don't even send a server request. You find a hook that's early enough in the life cycle of the request
Well, so
that redirects.
it's not past the expiration. Just when I shut,
So
there's
why?
not.
Why would you want to do that when they could just keep using the app without needing to reauth?
So the token doesn't last outside. The token will go away when you shut the browser. It's a session token with your server.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about like a token you put in a header that you're sending back and forth. That's going to still be in local storage. I don't know that cookie is no longer there. I don't have a cookie. But you can't look up your cookie in JavaScript. That's not allowed.
So you just want to wipe it out
If it's
regardless,
just
right?
If it's just a bearer token, it's probably completely in local storage. It's not going to be tied separately to cookie.
No, I would have two. I have my session token, and then I have a server cookie that gets sent back and forth. So I would send that.
Yeah, so your server is using the server cookie for session tracking, it sounds like, rather separately from authentication.
It's using both, so you can't just hijack someone's session.
Okay, so what's the problem with, and you're saying that you.
So
you wanna
I have a
local
token that's
storage.
invalid, and when I log off, it's in local storage, it hasn't expired from what my definition of expiration is. So then I have to make a request for me to realize that I don't have a valid cookie anymore. So it checks, I don't have a session, like my Tomcat session, so then it fails it. But I'm sending a token, so there's no, like, it can't resolve that token to a session because I don't even have one.
So wouldn't that invalidate, like you get?
That does invalidate it, but that requires
Trying
a
to
trip
save
to
the
the
trip.
server.
Well, ultimately, you have to get the server anyway to
Yeah.
try it in the first place.
And
Like,
you're email-
you're still just gonna get back, okay, and here's your.
But if I didn't have the token, that's what I'm doing. But I'm saying like that there's no, I couldn't think of a way to, when you like shut the browser, is there any way that can invalidate?
It's still not gonna stop your user from trying to go back to my authenticated route.
I wouldn't let them go there if they didn't have a token.
They're just hit refresh on the page.
They don't have a token, so then you take them to hall.
Well, yeah, but that's what will happen when you hit the server as well.
But you still have to make the requests.
Yeah.
Because if you have a token, then there's no way for me to know until I hit the server that it's invalid.
You have two tokens in this scenario?
One is a session cookie with my server that it passes back and forth,
Okay.
and the other one is an actual token.
That's maintained by your app state, the API
Yes.
that you're.
So the token's available from, like, someone else could see the cookie that's getting sent back and forth.
Mhm.
But there's an extra token that's like, it adds a layer of security on top of it.
Yeah, so it sounds like you need to invalidate the token, you need to invalidate the cookie when it's not gonna be valid anymore, and that's gonna probably be a lot of maintenance for you on the client side, because you're gonna actually probably have to do it manually.
Well,
Like,
there's
so
no way
if-
to inspect the Tomcat cookie.
You can maybe check
JavaScript.
to see.
You can't check cookies like that.
Yeah, I don't think you can.
You can't.
I don't think you can.
No, like I've looked, like you can, it's like.
But you're telling me you
The
should.
browser won't let you look at that level of cookie.
Well, so then
So
you can't.
because you could then, if someone went to your page, they could see what cookies you might have and then use that in the session hijack.
I mean, it sounds like that one request is the cost of your having the security.
Yeah, so that's what I do. I was just wondering if there was a way around it.
I don't know if
That's
the
what
route
Ember
takes into
if Ember
virus.
Symbol Lock does that too. It sends a request to the server and realizes that the token's been.
I think usually it's just, so the cookie, but it usually stores in local storage. It's not worrying about that. Like, it's a token, not a cookie.
Right, so it sends the token, yeah, you have to make one trip to the server is what it sounds
I
like.
think so.
Well, what about, like, hooking in, we were talking about hooks a little bit earlier, what about, I'm guessing that there's some type of hook that gets fired at, like, as the Ember app is tearing itself down, could you hook into that, and then tell it, hey, when you're doing this,
Just invalidate the
That's
session.
what I'm asking about, does that happen? Is there a hook that when you shut the browser? the
Your
Ember
app
app
tears down
down?
and close the browser.
Yeah, no, I think there may be like a window destroy.
But that's called like shutting a tab.
But wouldn't shutting your browser shut the tab?
If you had two tabs open, you don't want
Shut
to
both of them, right?
But if you shut one tab, it calls that function.
Killed your other session on your other tab, because it's shared.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found that function, but it's called in too many scenarios than just when the browser closes. And it's implemented differently in each browser.
Of course.
So that doesn't sound like an
You're gonna
Ember
browse
thing or
it.
a
Yeah.
simple law thing or something.
No, I was just,
Browser
yeah.
thing, right?
Well, it was just, I was curious if anyone, knew if there was a hook to do that was just the browser, because I couldn't find one.
Is it, are you required?
And I was wondering if Ember Simple Auth did it in a more clever way than I could think to do, because I didn't think of a clever way. I just sent my request to the server and it told me, hey, this isn't valid.
I guess my question is just, what's the downside of that? I mean, you got one round trip to the server that's gonna take a sub-second probably response time.
I've accepted it that this is what's gonna happen, and I'm not like
But it's
totally
worth
worried
asking.
about it. But I was curious,
If there's a better way.
It seems to me
I haven't been
cookie
doing this
storage-
stuff forever, so.
It seems to me that the cookie storage is what's causing the problem. Because if you could maintain that session somewhere else, like local storage somehow, like in parallel, then maybe you can inspect.
Right, that's what I wanted to do, and I wanted to access the
Yeah.
cookie and map the cookie to my token and know that, but it would, there's no, like, the Chrome wouldn't
Yeah.
let you access that later.
I think ultimately, you still need to hit the server to find out if it's valid, because they could just force expire all cookies on the server side.
Absolutely. They could have restarted their server environment or something.
Yeah, you can try and guess, but ultimately you have to ask the server. Anything that's time-based validation, you can't really assume your system clock is gonna match their system clock.
Oh, right, yeah.
Or be ready to handle a request that gets rejected because you think you have a valid session.
Yeah.
You send your special token across and then they
Yeah.
break it.
So no matter what, you end up having to handle the case where it's no longer valid, and so you might as well just use that. Unless you have absolutely nothing else in your application left to optimize.
You're in a good place.
I started to go around, like, can I get rid of this? Can
Yeah.
I avoid this step?
I've seen that cartoon, it's like,
And then it was like, I
okay,
couldn't.
that's it.
And I was
Yeah.
like,
The internet.
when I can't do something, I don't accept. I accepted it. It's
It's
like,
like-
because I couldn't figure it out. Not because that's not.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all that's all that can be done.
Sounds like that's every way to do it.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you could probably rig up something that's hacky that varies from browser to browser.
Right, and I
But
wouldn't
it's-
do that.
yeah, crazy.
I was wondering if there's an easy way.
Yeah, there's a, time, an effort reward curve that's not in this area.
I mean, have you got a route on your server that you can hit to validate the token?
It still takes the round trip.
Yeah, at that point, we're just
Well,
try.
at that point, it's getting stopped in an interceptor before it's in a route. There's like I use John Spring, and there's an interceptor that before it hits anything else, you can run cat.
Okay.
So it's like in the circle and filters, it'll catch it and check to see if there is, it checks the token in the session to see if those are valid.
So you don't need a special URL.
No.
You just
So
hit
that's what's doing it, but sometimes I'm firing off like 9 requests and it
And
hits.
they're all getting blocked.
They're all getting blocked, and then if you opened up your browser and you were looking at the console, you'd see a bunch of failed
But couldn't you
requests.
just hit an arbitrary URL in the app startup sequence?
You
And
could.
that's effectively.
That's your litmus test.
That's your litmus test.
Yeah, it just slows it down to whatever that round trip is for any case. But
Yeah, because you're having to run that every time now.
every time you refresh the browser. Not, I mean, so it's all minor optimization.
It's not
I guess.
refreshing the browser, it's starting up the application.
When you hit,
But it's because
I mean, it's the same thing. I thought you were talking
every time
about
you
the case
refresh, it
of,
starts up the application.
I shut down the browser, and now I want to restart the browser, and I want to know if the tokens that I've stored in local storage are still valid, because I can't use session storage across tabs. That's what you said.
Yes,
So you can't use session storage, so you're having to use local storage.
yes.
Okay, so you start the app, start the browser, which starts the app. And as part of the app startup, you can just say, I'm gonna go ping a URL, and that will allow me the opportunity to validate my local storage tokens, right?
Yeah, that would happen every time you hit refresh too.
Which is especially bad for developers.
Every time you refresh, it restarts your app from start to finish. It calls all your initializers because there's no difference between refresh and opening.
I mean, like you said, it's minor optimization, because
Yeah.
in production, that might work a little bit better for the guy that goes away for a couple hours and then comes back and doesn't want to log in again.
I don't know how fast your Ember apps are that like the 50 millisecond off endpoint hit like matters in app startup time.
We lose millions of dollars in customers. I'm kidding.
Super
I
fast
mean,
apps.
seriously, dude, like fast food, are you fast fooding right now? Like, I mean,
I guess you can have the server push out a notification.
that's what you should do.
Always.
The gears are turning out.
If you're listening, your token is back. But only if you're listening.
It sounds like
Transitioning from involved question to presentation.
Yes, we're no longer talking about that.
Topic is swayed.
Unless you guys want to. All right, so let me change my thoughts here.
Does
So,
anybody use Mac? Anybody use Ubuntu around here?
Wait, you said two different things though. One of these things.
I should be more precise. Does anybody use Ubuntu around here?
Not for development. On my other laptop, yes.
on one VM.
My other laptop is
I'm not sure I'm keen on writing JavaScript all day.
They got like your slide deck.
Any of the Linux players.
Well, yeah, so there's
On the desktop anymore.
Opal,
That's the worst thing about Java.
but I don't think that's widely adopted.
You dedicate all your filling time to Vim.
Yes.
So you don't want to.
Yeah, I think they want JavaScript based.
When's the last time you added?
You need a vacation.
I add a little bit like every week, probably like a line.
Chris, can you add
So,
every 5 minutes
like,
of
then
presentation?
you add it.
That's almost like a
Oh, yeah.
And also,
He's like,
you can back
so
those.
I'm like, I wanna do that too. I wanna do that.
Yes.
We're using features around here now.
Yeah.
Once I got tired of, there was some more stuff for this exploration, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Not really fully.
I think everybody flirted with Mint for a little while. I'm not sure how many folks stuck on Mint, but I flirted with it and I was like, offshore service release, good enough.
Cinnamon was a little shady. Not sure the right switch. Yeah. I had any problems. So it did get like still kind of shitty.
I like that. You don't want to. What does that say?
They're not the biggest guy.
I guess I've become an advocate of static recycling.
Yeah, I have to.
Yeah.
Exactly, because all the way right in there.
Got everybody all riled up for you.
All right, Will, good luck bringing us all back.
This is nice. This is peaceful.
Yeah, but that's what the other JavaScript targeters. But then going back to Ruby for a little while, I'm like, oh man.
Oh, I can do so much stuff.
So it's hard to say. I would rather not write JavaScript all day.
So you're gonna write Elm?
I haven't. No, I haven't checked it out.
It's totally. It's like someone who likes Haskell made a front end language.
Yeah.
So it's a functional language.
It's an entirely statically typed functional front end.
Is immutable.
Yep.
I've been hearing a lot about it. I feel like it's just functional hype. Everybody hypes up functional.
It's like no, it's
You know, like right functional.
Where's your functional hype?
But like, no, but I know, it's functionally. But I mean, Java is already a functional language. It's not static typed. Yeah, okay, you say that, but it's supposed to be functional language. It's like functional.
It's a language that has first class functions that we
And
standard
that's where it
language
stops.
against standard functional programming practice.
Right, yeah, so it basically was a functional language and then we started piling on unfunctional stuff, made it auditory.
Kind of.
It's a prototype.
Yeah, I've been a Java developer for like the last 3 years.
Oh yeah, I'm too. And Groovy.
Cool. So you're doing Java stuff. I saw IntelliJ.
Yeah, I'm about to switch to IntelliJ
What can't you
in a
do
moment.
someday? I mean,
It's got ES6 module syntax highlighting in base level IntelliJ. So you don't even have to buy the web storm, which is nice.
Have you messed with RX Java at all?
Mm-mm.
Yeah. Have you heard about it?
Is that reactive Java?
Yeah, it's functional reactive Java framework.
I have not. I went to, there was DevNexus, my company paid for
Okay,
that,
cool,
and
yeah.
all they talked about was functional programming in Java. So
Yeah.
I probably witnessed a talk.
They probably
I was like functional.
I mean, functional programming
Oh,
sounds
dear.
like so much fun, but it
Yeah.
sounds like,
We just
I don't
had
want
this
to.
unfortunately, functional reactive programming
Yeah.
sounds so academic, but
Yeah.
it's really not.
It's really Elm is really interesting. If you like programming languages just from like a nerd out kind of sense, like it's pretty awesome. From what I've seen.
Not for me, but for those on the video, could you ask or answer what is functional programming? And is it what I think it is?
It's just a bunch of buzzwords.
I mean,
Kind of nailed it.
It's kind of like the return type is a function.
You don't have objects.
is a function.
First order functions.
And that, therefore, you wind up with a pretty immutable state because functions are immutable, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think sort of, let's go around the room, like, everybody gets to explain functional programming.
I mean, well, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not real complicated.
Well, the thing with procedure and a function, if you've actually used a procedural language like Fortran, there is a wide gulf between we have subroutines to we actually have return values now. And that was a jump for going from COBOL and Fortran to other languages.
Return values.
Yes, that was a totally mind-blowing idea.
That's weird.
That's what I saw.
That was procedural, not functional.
Yeah.
I would love a good course on
It's like a burrito, except for it's not. It's a no-no.
There's been like 3 history of learning languages.
So, but I know Android development.
Okay.
RX Java is like the bastion of hope.
That's where I've heard of it. That's where a guy who was doing Android asked me if I'd seen that.
If you know anything about Android, they might be like,
I will talk to our Android guy tomorrow. I think he was the one who told me about it.
We're like, Andrew's like, we're gonna go through, like, you programming it.
Oh, I thought it was like jQuery's
Yeah.
sister
Oh, yeah.
I thought you said Jay Courtney.
Could be, yeah.
I'll be like a side project for Jay Courtney.
That's the world. This is
Yeah.
I learned enough COBOL.
All right.
Just so I can actually see what it was like if everyone did.
I've had it on the desk. All right, order. Yeah, if you answer it right, I actually had a math teacher who would give Tic Tacs if you got answers right. So we all paid attention. Anyway, I'm about to do a talk on form wizards using custom computed property macros. That might mean something now, or it might mean something in a moment. So, at a high level, let's just talk about, we all know what a wizard is, but it's just going to be nice to define it as we're developing what will ultimately be the abstraction we build around it.
cool hat, a cane.
Exactly, yeah. I thought about putting in a wizard picture, but then I was like, I don't know how to do transitions in PowerPoint, So a wizard at its basic form is it's multiple forms linked in the same process. There's some kind of processing that happens between steps. Requirements, people generally love them. They'll tell you to put it in a wizard, so you got to do that. There's ways to navigate between steps. Forward button, backwards button, it can be arrows, it can be whatever you want it to be. But these buttons' visibility and their text depends on the current step. So if you're at the beginning of a wizard, we shouldn't show a back button. That makes no sense. If I'm at the end of a wizard, I can go no further unless if it is a looping wizard. There's all sorts of wizards. So, oftentimes, some steps will lead you to a read-only state of the form that you looked at before. Think of any payment system you've ever used. Make a payment. Are you sure you want to make the payment? Make the payment. Okay? So, that also depends on the step. There's a theme here. I pretty much put step in every line on it. Not on purpose. It's just kind of everything depends on the step that you're on in the wizard.
Yeah.
It should be clear at the bottom that all the dynamic aspects of the form are dependent on the current state. So if you think about it, it's essentially a finite state machine. So let's design a wizard. We're going to make, I do online banking software, so this is my wheelhouse. We're going to make a payment system. We'll make it so you can pay your friends. And there's going to be a create, a review, and a complete. As we said before, the review process and the complete process will be read-only representations of the create. Now, in an actual app, not in the one I'm building here, you would probably talk to a server in between each forward step. So when you create it, you might have limits, you might have to check the bank account, you might have to check all sorts of things. So there's got to be some process in there. And then it'll validate it, and if it's valid, then you can hit complete, and it's going to complete it, give you a transaction, make sure all that goes into financial processing happens. So as we mentioned in the page before, there's a step, and all these properties depend on that step. So wouldn't it be nice if Ember had something that changed its value as a dependent key change, which there is. Computer properties, we all use them, right? I don't know if most people probably started out, who've been doing Ember for a while, writing it with .property, and then one day when you were looking around the internet, all of a sudden you saw, no, don't do that. Extending the prototype is bad. Something called Ember Watson, which apparently would replace it for you, to the second syntax, ember.computed, where it's not actually extending the function prototype. Side note, does anyone know why that was bad to extend the function prototype? It conflicted with some people, or
Did Doug Crockford tell us not to?
he might have. I'm not sure. But there's two types. Everyone knows we're all Ember users here. We all know what computed properties do. If the dependent keys change, it's going to recompute the value. It can be used like a property. So let's get into the wizard workflow. So I thought about it, and this is my abstraction for what a wizard is. When you're switching between steps, we're going to toggle a loading property on and off. When that loading property is on, we're going to show some nice kind of graphic. When you call, there's two sets of functions. There's next function and previous function that you'll define. So to get from step 1 to step 2, there's a certain function you should call. To get from step 2 to step 3, there's a certain function you should call. You're always going to change the state. In the next order, you'll always get the next payment step, which is what I've defined as next, and you'll set it to that, and you'll set is loading to false. And since these are always talking to the server, then these next functions should always return a promise. So this is just a generic mechanism for moving through the wizard. So your next button will always call the next action, and you'll get through it. So I'll show the necessary properties. Was that clear what the workflow was there?
Previous doesn't trigger loading.
No, so the previous, in this simple example, doesn't need any talking to the server. It just needs to move back to the state. It might need to reset it. It might not need to do anything. If it's in the first page, you might have a cancel that clears out the form. So you might attach that to your cancel button, but you don't actually want to change to a previous step. So that's why I left it like that. The next steps, though, are always moving you through the wizard. So yeah, here's the properties I'm defining. There's a payment step, which is the current step of the wizard. This is what is the dependent key for everything. There's a next function. So as I said, it returns a promise because it's hitting the server. The previous function, which takes you back. Next button, previous text are both dynamic depending on the state. And read only for the second and third state. So if we were just to use basic computed properties, and this is actually how when I first wrote one of these, I started to do this and I got to the second one and I was like, okay, wow, this is entirely too much repetition. The only thing that differs between these is the value itself, which is dependent on the state. So as you see, if we are in create, let's go to review. If we're in review, let's go to complete. If we're in complete, let's go to create. Same thing with next button. Same thing with all the different states. So these should be able to be represented by a flat structure, just a regular object. Why did I put that slide? Like this. So I removed a lot of the values I'm talking about so it would fit on the screen in a readable form. But imagine, so in the create step, we know that the next function we want to call is review. In review, we want to call complete. The text for the next button is review. It might help. I'll just go ahead and show you the end result. That might.
What's going on, bro?
This is a wizard that I'm talking about. So I'm talking about the next button, the previous button, the steps that we're on, and read only, all that. So this is clear. This is the end goal we're trying to get to. So I'm going to switch back to the PowerPoint. So yeah, so here's this flat structure. And so higher order computed properties to the rescue, aka macros. We're all familiar with these. Alias, reduce, sum, not equal. Does anyone ever use these ember.computed methods? These are all macros. And I wanted to figure out how to do this, so I just looked in the source code. There's a file and it has how they define all of them. And the way it works is you define a function that returns a computed. So rather, it's that alternative syntax I said, the ember.computed. The example I actually brought from there, say an alias ember.computed as computed. That's why it looks like this. This is straight out of Ember source code. And so this is not, so as you see, there's a function called not, as if we look at the bottom example, we want to know when it's not bar. So that would just be not Ember. Actually, that's a horrible example. It should be a Boolean. But I just put something in there, that's how I was going. Made this today. So yeah, so we all get how this works. So then you can just attach inside of a controller, you can just say, or component if you're in Ember 2.0 land, or controller if you haven't upgraded, whatever you want, you would put not, or whatever your own might be. So I made my own. I think this is a common problem that I have a lot, and it's perfect in Wizards, but the idea is that there's a single piece of state which is driving lots of different values. So in this case, the piece of state is the payment step that we're on. So we get the current state, which is what we pass in. So if you want to just see what it looks like here, we've got, you would say the state val, it uses the payment step vals, and then what property we're trying to set. So if we look back over here, these are our payment step vals. It's going to get the current state, extract the object from the map, so to speak. So if we're on the create step, it's going to grab the create object, and then it's going to look up whatever property on that object are null. So all of these properties are able to be defined without those if else, if else, if else. It's just when that piece of state changes, we grab the correct values for that state. And so in the case of this wizard, there's like 9 or 10 different values that are all dependent on what step you're on. And by doing this and by using I use these a lot now that I've figured out you could do this, and you can write smaller ones and then combine them and then combine them again. So you've got generic higher order computed macros. Yes?
I have a question. Why did you not use a state machine? Like an actual state machine? Or just for this example, or just curious?
What do you mean?
Well, you use the flat hash map, basically. And then you kind of check the object property and return null or whatever. But if you use a state machine, it could kind of handle a lot of that logic for you.
But how?
Ensure that
What would that look like, I guess is...
Oh, I don't know if Ember has a state machine that you use. It's just an object, and you define the transitions between the states. Like actually use a finite state machine JavaScript plugin or something.
Yeah, I've never seen those in Ember World. That's essentially what I was striving for.
Yeah, you did it.
I did it, yeah.
But you could get some better guarantees by using an actual, state machine.
Is the difference of the transition is in the object that he's passing in?
Well, you're implementing the state machine yourself.
It is the actual.
Use it as like a object, like you.
Right, so my state machine is the next action, the previous action, the state vals, and the state val macro.
There's some.
That's my ad hoc state machine.
There's some good JavaScript state machines you could have used.
Okay, cool. I'll look into that. Yeah.
I was just curious.
No, I just.
Do you have an example? I don't know them either.
You could Google JavaScript.
Do you know what that looks like as like its representation, like data structure wise?
Have you ever used it in Ruby or anything? Okay, so basically you did it as a hash, and you would kind of pass that hash basically to an object that would then internally build a state machine and enforce all that logic and stuff based on the transitions you define, which is what you did. It's just you have to check if it could be in a. You checked if it could return a null value or something, or return.
Well, I put a null value there just because I should return something from here, and I could have thrown an error, but
if you're using a real state machine, you're guaranteed never to have a problem. It's not possible.
Assuming I set it up correctly, it would.
There's an add-on.
There's an add-on for state machine. Nice. Nice.
Use something like that, and you won't have to worry about getting into an invalid state. Well, if there's no invalid state, it'll just
seems relatively accurate.
Cool.
You would never get null because you're always moving from a state to another state by your transitions.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, so in conclusion, by putting state values to work and using macros, you can drastically reduce your code footprint and keep things dry.
So, you use a hash, why do you use an array? It seems like your state is, there's
Actually-
an order to it.
I had to use an array at one point to make something work, but it actually felt better. I'll show you. I had to use an array to make it work with
Because your
10.
hash, there's no implied order in the hash, right?
Right.
Wait, so
There kind of is. It has a start state. But sure, I could drag the order around all I wanted to. I'm not insane, so I kept it in the order that it is. But yes, if I put it in, but I could have put it in any order since I was just using objects. I guess the purist in me was like, well, if there's a million states, it'd be so much faster to look this up with key access in a map than in an array. But I'm never going to have more than 3 or 4 states, so it probably doesn't make a difference.
And you're to glom onto what, what's your name?
Sandy.
I'm sorry?
Sandy.
Sandy, to glom onto what Sandy was saying, in a complex state machine where it's not just transition next and previous, but it could be any node to any node based on some transition.
It actually wouldn't work in an array.
It would not work, well, I mean, it could, but it would be harder.
You would have to
do
duplicate
that.
states if it
But
looped
in
back
yours,
around.
You're implicitly only linking one state to its siblings, to its neighbors, right? So it's previous and next, it's -1 and +1. I didn't see any
If we
place where
made
you
this
would say,
if we made this
go
into
back
a
and
more
start.
complicated state machine, we would have to use different terms than just next and previous.
Right.
So this isn't a state machine where there can only be next and previous. If there was other alternatives, then there would be a lot more logic involved here, but it still wouldn't make sense to use an array because an array would imply linear, or at the end of the day, I would have to iterate over the arrays to find a dependent key, which I'm already using as the key outside of it.
I don't know that that's the case, but the way you mapped it all out, it is linear. I mean, you showed the screenshot of your app.
It's kind of arbitrarily linear. I think
It is. I mean, no.
I'll show you the-
Doesn't need to be linear.
What you wanted, no.
I'll show you the app
actual
itself.
App itself.
Oh, yeah,
So, step 1, step 2, step
Right.
1, 2, and 3 are.
A wizard
It is-
does
it is
happen.
linear.
Yes.
Right, okay, I mean, you even got numbers there, 1, 2, 3.
So in this case, an array would work. Yeah, and that's actually, I had to convert it to an array to get those steps to work.
That's why I'm asking, it's like, step number is position in array +1.
So I originally wrote this based on routes
Okay.
and let routes do it, and I had it as an array of routes. And I wish I could remember why 3 or 4 weeks ago I was like, when I'm rewriting this, I'm not using an array, but I don't remember at this moment. But either does work, and I agree with you. And I had to use it here because this Fulux plugin required that I use a data index, and I had to do that old hacky thing where you have to get like the underscore each of the view to get the index. And I don't know, you guys done that?
Yes.
We've all been there.
I think you did a talk on it.
I don't think we have to do that anymore because we all upgraded it to
Yeah. Well, we're not all so lucky.
One thing to note with the computers, they have to be read when you want to recompute. They don't just recompute on their own. So you have to
Yeah,
evaluate it.
I remember reading an article by one of the guys who said the computed properties are bad.
That's observer.
If you use them badly, it's a good. I mean, it's with anything. It's like if you use them poorly and you bake in the logic that this will cause this to happen, which will cause this to happen, which will cause this to happen, then yeah, that's kind of insane, and that's probably hard for you to remember. But in like a full name thing, that seems like, I don't think that's the root of all evil. I think that's kind of nice. But I read that article too,
All right.
and I was like, I agree, and then I was like, wait, no, I don't.
They're Jessica Rabbit, they're just drawn bad, right?
I don't know.
Half this room is too young.
Yeah, I'm 24. I don't know what that means.
Who killed, I'm sorry, look it up later, who killed Roger Rabbit?
That's who killed him?
Yeah, we can probably find that on YouTube and stuff.
Pretty tracking, of course. So wasn't that a reaction to, data down, actions up is a reaction to computer properties determining the state of our applications?
More of a two-way finding.
Yeah. And actually, I remember after Connect.js, it got me looking at React and all that shit that Facebook's doing with JavaScript, you know? They have a different name for it. They have a different name for everything, concept, you know? Anyway, and there's a lot of really cool stuff with transitioning states.
Right.
I don't know if you've actually done any research on this. There's some really cool, like Reflux, I think is a.
That's part of React. Isn't it?
Reflux
Flux.
is not actually Facebook.
Something's a part of React that has the word flux in
Kind of
it.
like that, right? But it's all about transitioning between states, which is what you're talking about.
Right.
You have, here's the state of my payment, and I'm going to use this wizard to construct portions of the state in very small pieces. I'm only going to operate on this small state, this part of the state at a time, right? So, you know, I'm going to pick these three fields, these three arbitrary fields. They're going to go in this part of the wizard, and I'm going to let the user manipulate that part of the state. And then I'll go to another part, then I'll go to another part, and then I'll review it, and then I'll complete it. That's basically the what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see it in action. Just to clarify, is this too small?
Yes.
Yes.
Gia, what was the command to? Oh yeah. There we go. We work together. She's annoyed with me. So this is the route. Here's my model. I've got 4 friends total
Well, that's good.
in life. And we've got payment methods, which are really just accounts. These aren't my real account numbers. We've got
Start to throw me off.
Yeah, I'm masking it. All right, so for setting up the controller, I set the minimum date for my date picker to be today. We have this payment object, which is going to back up the wizard. So it's who I'm paying, the account, the amount, the date, and a reset function, just to refresh the route.
Is the all uppercase Y's ISO week of year calendar rather than the regular calendar?
Year.
Well, I'm trying to remember. There's an uppercase, lowercase difference.
That's
between
gonna
ICU,
be-
where one is the week year calendar versus the regular calendar.
I don't know. That's 11, whatever today is, 2015.
Yeah. Well, the two different calendars differ in when they begin the new year. So you can have like January 1st through 6th can be in the previous year.
Interesting.
Really?
Yeah. It's an accounting thing, so each year is numbered and it actually starts conveniently on Monday, is what it is.
Interesting.
So
So
that's tripped us up on
this
some
moment
projects.
format thing?
It's an ICU thing, so International Components for Unicode, which has metastasized across a lot of things. I'm not sure if that's Moment, but it's one of those things that I always have to look up and double check every time I use 4-digit, every time I use a year.
I think that's
It's
just
bitten me before.
normal.
This is
That's
today.
normal. That's the years I live in. I don't. That's non-accounting years. So this is what it looks like in practice. We've got our whole blob of states using non-standard roll your own state machines. We've got the state vowels, so it knows how to get the next function. It's using these computer properties to get the correct values based on the state that we're in. And then we define the functions at the bottom. I've just got this thing that mocks what an AJAX call would do by creating a promise that resolves after 300 milliseconds so that we can see the loading spinner. So yeah, we got
I see.
fast servers. Okay, so we've got cancel, edit, review, complete. So the review, complete, and make another just do their normal show the spinner that would be making a call at that point. The edit goes back. It has to actually set the state to go back, and then cancel doesn't change states. It stays at itself and just resets the form, and then make another also resets the form. And then if we want to look at the form itself, I wrote my own form library, so this is kind of what all this is. But if it's loading, show the infinity spinner. Although infinity spinner didn't work in IE, so we had to use a GIF, and now it's just a half infinity. So it's still infinity, but it's just a circle now. So half infinity is still infinity, but anyway. So this is what it does on the on submit. We go we go to the next action, and then so we've got these selects and the form itself, and then if show cancel, if show, I didn't even put print in here, but if we had a print button, that would only be on the final stage. You've got all these things, and then you got your state valves that are driving it, and all you got to do is change those values, and everything works. And then the wizard lets you choose. We'll pay Gia in the back and pay her from a MasterCard.
Give her like thousands of dollars. There we go. Yeah. Like tomorrow. Well, jeez. Yeah.
In a year. And enjoy soon. We can go back. We can go forward, and we can complete it.
Yay. And you can make another, or you can print it.
Yep, and it resets itself, and it's... So we have, where I work, we have a bunch of these wizards. So I just made a mix-in that's the payment wizard, and then you just have to define a few actions wherever you use it.
Yeah. That was actually my question. I was going to be, so this is a mix-in that includes, so you have a method that you can call.
Yep.
And you probably pass that method in an object, like you were describing. Is all it requires to use what you built here?
It's just define.
Literal
It's just you define a review function. You override any of the functions that get called between the steps if you need something to happen there.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Everything else is common across a 3-step payment
But
wizard.
it has to have an understanding of what next is and previous is and stuff like that. Like there's an object literal, like a nested object literal that you had. Does that make sense? The terminology I just made. So you have like a hash inside of a hash, and that's a hash, whatever the thing is.
This?
No, I'm thinking less about the implementation and more about like there's a data structure that was like next is this and previous is this or something like that. You didn't have something like that.
This?
You must have pointed that again.
What are we talking about?
You were showing that, I think.
So your wizard is a payment wizard and has a fixed number of steps. And you override those steps. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
It's not as generic as what you're thinking.
I want to just pass in the object and the world understands itself.
Yeah, so, you could. You could just, if you wanted to make an even more generic wizard, this is the 3-step payment wizard. But if you wanted a more generic wizard, you could have as many steps as you wanted to in this step vowels. And you just pass that into it, and it just calls this generic get the next function, invoke it, and when it resolves the promise, set the next step. So it could be infinite.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds fun.
So the real takeaway from this though is using those higher order computed macros. You can define them below, you can say export below like any controller you're using where you've got common work you're doing, and you can just abstract that out into your own computed property builder, basically, and use it. So like...
Wait, can we back up a step? Where did you use the computed properties again? I mean,
the state val.
I was getting into the wizard, and I missed the part where you're using...
So state val...
Where's that defined at? In the macro?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be dense.
Yeah, no.
It just seemed like you started out talking about computed properties, and I never actually saw...
Right, well, so remember when I had those gigantic computed properties where I was doing the if it's this state, do this, if it's this state, do that? Yeah, that got replaced by this higher order computed macro state val that figures out what state I'm on, looks up the values, so it gets the current state, it gets the values, the whole object containing the objects, and then it looks up the current state, its object, and then it looks up whatever property on that object. and that changes anytime the payment step changes. It recomputes all of those values. So back in the demo, the next function can be defined as a state val that uses the payment step as its dependent key, uses the step vals as the vals that we're using, and when we call the next function, it's going to call whichever next function is on the current state's object. So if we're in review, it's going to use the next function complete, and then I've defined complete down here to be mock Ajax. Does that make sense? So if you had 15 steps in your wizard, which would be horrible UX, but if you had a wizard that was that long, then you would just be defining the properties up here, and you don't have to do if it's this state, return this, if it's this state, return this, if it's this state, return this. Right. It's able to look it up on the object.
So do you see how the third argument to those functions is always the name of the property? Like in this case, like next function, next button, next, like.
Yeah.
You know that, so if you go to your macros, that computed there, where your computed of state, that function there will have that property name passed in as a secret first argument, so you don't even really have to pass that third argument in, you just know what it is because of the way Ember.get works.
It's going to pass in the left part?
So,
the name of the property.
Yeah, the name of the property when you use Ember.get gets passed into that computed property definition over there, so you can dry that up like a ton.
Where?
Yeah, man, you missed my talking about it. It was all about that.
I wasn't here.
Yeah,
That sounds like something that would be in one Ember version, and then when I tried to upgrade it, it's not going to be there.
I'm pretty sure it's around for a bit.
So where in...
If you pull up the docs, just pull up the Ember API.
Where in this would I...
So you've got return computed state function. I'm pretty sure that the return computed of state comma function, I can't see a line number.
Function gets an argument.
Yeah, function will get a property name argument, or whatever you want to call it.
That is the name that I defined on the left?
That you're getting. Yeah.
Yeah, you can draw this up so hard.
I'm about to just delete all of that.
All right, and then after that, you can use get unknown property. If you call Ember.get on it and it doesn't have a property defined, it will automatically call it function. So you could return a computed property from that based on like all these other things. So you don't have to like define these things explicitly. Like it just happens.
It's the same for services too. When you do
we have a lot of wizards too, so
I couldn't hear you over the wizard jokes.
When you do Ember.inject service,
Yeah.
you don't need to pass in anything into the parentheses. It'll just read it off the left.
So
that's how it's doing that.
Dasherize the name of whatever the property you're defining is.
Yeah.
So as long as those align, you don't have to actually name the service separately.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There's lots of stuff like that.
So you say you use a lot of wizards in your business.
Hey man, we do payments too. It's sweet. People love wizards.
They love wizards. Don't write it anyway or you'll rewrite it as a wizard.
How did you implement wizards?
Way worse than this. We have like fewer, and so they're also like not really related. So I use routes mostly for ours. We like some before hooks and stuff to make sure that we're in a state that makes sense.
So I went down the route way, and then a tester was like, hey, when I hit the back button and I hit forward again, it tries to make the payment again. This doesn't seem like good. So I had to rewrite all of it as state val based. But it is kind of true. You do way less work when you don't have to test the state you're in if they can get to it from the URL. You've kind of just controlled it. Then once you get to this page, if the requirement is that they can hop back in the middle of a wizard, then you should probably use routes. But if that's not a requirement, you remove the back button. It's easier to control what happens.
Yeah, this is a case where like you really don't want state driven by a URL. Like
Not at all.
You can maybe use query params if you want to give people like shortcuts or something, but for the most part, like
Everything had to extend like the same mix-in that did a before model check to make sure some piece of state that I knew couldn't get anywhere unless if you went from the first step was there in the second and third step, but that still didn't avoid going back and forth, and I tried rewriting the history, and then that, when you rewrite the history, it still shows it in the URL even if you control where they go to, and it was just a mess. So.
My solution that comes to mind is the server should have been bending the knots, and once you use the knots as part of the payment, it can't be used again.
Oh, it was failing the payment.
Oh, good.
But they were like, we're getting all these banners when we go back and forth. We don't want that. So I mean, it's true. You don't want that.
Did you already pay this? You want to pay it again? Sure. Fun.
So yeah.
We're bankmates. Oh yeah, and Moment, as far as I can tell, does not support the week of the year calendar because it's not actually pulling in all the ICU stuff. So as long as you don't actually need that, you're in luck. And if you do need that, you need something else. I did find, so I was looking for something that actually handles internationalization, which, as far as I can tell, I haven't found anyone who really talks about that as an issue very much, in terms of like strings and things.
Oh.
Because your entire UI, you need to internationalize region-specific resources, strings, including formatting strings, which is tons of fun with polarization rules and genders, and also, of course, locale-based numeric and date formats. And so the thing I found that seemed to do that best does pull in the ICU stuff, and it's format.js. And if you've ever used something else that uses the ICU libraries, it will seem very comfortable.
Yeah. Ember has some pretty basic localization stuff, but it doesn't handle things like date format and things. It'll give you basic string mapping stuff where you want to say bonjour instead of hello.
Yeah.
Good talks.
Patrick, you want to talk about the website a little more?
Yeah, hold on. I do.
Props.
So another thing that's pretty cool is that we were making this website. And I know it's like everybody's ready to go home. It's like, oh, the pizza's gone. And by the way, I recognize that being a problem. The problem is that people don't tell me they're coming on Meetup necessarily.
Yeah, sure.
And so I don't freaking know. So tell me you're coming.
I have to drop it.
Yeah, but you also dropped it and you gave a great talk. So like you eat all the pizza you want. Okay, so right, but I forgot my point about the pizza. So I'm moving on.
Say yes on Meetup.
Right, yeah. Say yes on Meetup and we'll get more pizza and lots of things around that. So this is what it was. This is what it has been for so long. And honestly, it still is this.
Also, isn't the location not like where we're actually meeting anymore?
Right, because the whole no, this was not a mistake. This was because this is not about the meetup. This is about a single event that we had, and we made the entire website for it. And it was the whole time where Tom Dale and Yehuda Katz came and gave a talk, and it was a really wonderful thing for us. It was a whole lot of fun, and it was a huge, which is a location that this map accurately points to. If we were to zoom into it, not that, go away. All right, whatever. So it's down there. So, but we figured out. But so now let's go and see what our website is now. And let me recognize that I don't have it up because I didn't really prepare myself to do this. I ran back there and grabbed my computer 2 seconds ago, so I can probably. Yeah. Okay. Everybody loves Ember CLI, right? So are we serving? I don't know all the stuff. Okay, so
cool trick too. If you command double click on a URL in terminal, it will launch it in your browser.
Whoa, hold on, give me that again.
So I don't know about iTerm too, but command double click on that serving on. So that was the live reload server. And if you command double click on the local host one.
Brilliant. So our backend is on Heroku, so it's booting up It's gonna take a second.
Need to catch up on this whole forest thing.
Yay! Okay, so here's our website now, and so this is where we are. Okay, so here, look where we are.
Updated the location. Cool.
Big Nerd Ranch is where we are. Look at this. Okay, so that's correct. But some other things we have is we have some great data about the world that we're living in right now. We know we're at this monthly meetup. This is basically us grabbing information off of meetup.com and popping it on our website because we want to kind of mimic and illustrate what's happening here. We'd like to have a place where people can come and actually engage in what we're doing here. So Greg and I on Sunday we kind of came together and we like started to build this together. And so I was kind of like on the back end, he was on the front end. We're trying to figure out how to pull the data together and do cool things like that. And we figured some cool things out. So one of our like really cool tricks we're doing right now is so Chris is always talking about how he wants to learn so much more about serializers. And so I don't know if that's actually true, but so if he were to, he could come here and say, I want to learn about serializers as a topic name, and just tell me some stuff, right? All this stuff. And boom, submit it. And that's not going to clear the form out or anything, but it's going to show us that we care about serializers here. So the point is there's some good work here, and it's probably going to be something that worth doing. We're putting some real effort into it, and but we could use some help. And
That's the larger point.
and so come help us.
So some things that other people are doing with their websites are, Ember London has a really good one, and they've gone so far as
You should catchbox this conversation.
have all their members. Ember London has all their members' GitHub information. They ask them to provide the GitHub information, and then they scan GitHub and show like how many PRs their members are doing across open source projects, like kind of a Meetup activity level, which is kind of cool, I think, to see like how active they are in various projects. Patrick has talked about trying to integrate something like that, either with Meetup or something else, so that essentially we know who you are. We ask, do you want us to know who you are? You say yes and give us your email address, and we say, okay, cool, we know who you are. And then when you upvote or downvote topics or suggest topics, we'll know who you are.
Yeah. There's so many great ideas around this, and I love the idea of it pulling GitHub in, and so right now this is pulling information from Meetup.com, and so we have all of your email addresses, honestly. But we're going to figure out a better way to manage that, so that you come in here and actually enter your email address, and that will actually provide the data. So you can opt into this if you want to. So. Another thing that would be great is what I'm working on right now is figuring out in our API serving this to integrate YouTube, and the conversation I'm having right now with that camera is going to be on YouTube, where it's going to end up being at this on this website. So we're going to have that in the API also. So the point is it's cool and fun, and let's come hack on this thing, and hopefully this can be a place for us to learn how each other work with this framework, and work in our environments in a way to kind of integrate our work together.
Is it on GitHub?
It is on GitHub, absolutely.
I actually already started.
Just
So
do what?
we can.
Can't do what?
I send you a pull request.
You started a pull request?
Can we?
Not a pull request. I started your repo, the Atlanta.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So if we have a feature idea, we can send you a pull
Oh, this is not.
Is that-
I'm not working on that right now.
Is that?
And that was on video too.
No, it wasn't. That was not. That was no.
Atlanta-ember-org/Atlanta-ember.
Yeah.
When I say dash, I mean hyphen.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Sorry.
Are you gonna pull it up, or are you going?
Well, I need to do this now. So I'm sorry. It's a whole thing.
Didn't you have that earlier? Yeah, it was on the intro presentation. I can plug in my laptop if you've got some shady stuff.
No, nothing's shady. Nothing's shady at all. This is me and my thing, and so regardless about me,
It's a less furry version.
who I obviously am awesome. Okay, we can go to this, which is our Meetup.org GitHub, and it has all the things that we're dealing with. And there was a time we were dealing with. We had a discourse application that we're trying to figure out how to work in, and that is still there. You can go to it. that's not at all integrated with who we are, or no one's using it also. But we do have some interesting things here. We have so this application here, Atlanta Ember, is the front end application that we were just viewing. We have this back end application that's just a Rails application. It's a Rails API, kind of, and that's what I've been working with, trying to facilitate all the things. And then this is actually the website. And so this is just like, so we don't have some kind of cool Ember CLI deploy doing this actually. This is me, my little script that I wrote manually going and pushing it up to the GitHub Pages repo, which is pretty solid. Anyway, lots of things to do, lots of ways to like get involved, and lots of things to improve upon. And I think
Send you a pull request?
Please send me pull requests.
Okay.
Please send us all the pull requests.
And I charge by the line.
You can charge so much. You can charge $100 million for the pull requests. Because so all pull requests. Give me the charge that you require at some point in a GitHub, in a commit or something like that, and I won't ignore that. I'll appreciate that you gave me a charge, you know? I'll give you a thumbs up for the charge. Yeah, you know, and everyone will be paid in full with a big thumbs up, you know? So anyway, that's what I want to do. And we'd also so Greg and I were so happy to be working and just wishing more people were hanging out with us. So all we want is a community to hang out with. We had no friends. I have no friends. He has a lot of friends. But hopefully maybe every fourth week, or there may be a day of the month that we can agree on that we kind of come together and do this. And to emphasize this point, I would love for this to be a place for people who are kind of new to the framework and new to this kind of development to come and see how people who have been doing it for a while are doing it, right? So let's bring people and get them involved and have it a place where it's a nurturing environment, maybe doing a lot of pairing and that kind of thing, and getting accustomed to things. That's what I have to say. That's kind of that's the website. Okay. Any questions about any of that or anything?
How do we get into the organization?
Oh. There's only 4 people over here in this. I have to invite you. Do I have to invite you? Does anybody have any suggestions to how to get in an organization?
Just invite me.
I think you have to.
Do I actually have to invite everybody to the organization?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, that's how it works.
It seems sketchy if you could just join the organization.
Well, that's a good point.
Invite me. Mutex kid.
I will definitely.
Send an email if anybody wants to be invited. Send us your
Is that easier to remember when my last name is Patrick?
Yes, invite Josh. Skeen? Yeah, can I make you the owner?
One step at a time.
I'm not the only one that doesn't have one.
Cam
Yeah, there you go. Oh, you're getting there.
Few more than
Tomeron?
Oh, there's an H before the O.
Oh, that's what it is.
spelling.
That's the thing I'm the worst at, is spelling. Who else? Who else?
Anybody volunteer?
Nobody cares. All right. So, yes, send me pull requests. I will pay you so much. But so recognizing it's not actually me, it's our organization. Someone's also a part of the organization. Okay, so awesome, and thanks for listening to me talk about that. And you're probably going to close us out or something.
No, the closeout is usually sit around and hang out here, or we usually go next door. And
That's right, you kind of just involved instead of hanging out.
We fall into drinking.
Yeah. All right. So recognizing. Okay. So I'm gonna step back in front of the camera while I say I'm recognizing that there's a camera situation right now. I'm gonna go turn that mug off because we're done. Okay.
Thanks for the formal announcement. Does anybody want stickers that doesn't have any stickers? I keep forgetting to set them out. We have stickers of our little mascot guy.